Tanya for the 24th day of Iyar is in Perek Mem Aleph, Nun Aleph, chapter 51. It's on page 142. The number at the bottom of the page is 268. Earlier in the chapter, the Alter Rebbe said that the statement in the Zohar that the Shechina rests on the head of a person and therefore he should wear a yarmulke, and that in order to make that Shechina enter into the body, you have to have oil, just like the flame needs oil to hold it to the wick, to attach it to the wick. In the same way, in order for the body to be permeated by the Shechina, you have to have oil that brings the flame, which is the Shechina, into the wick, which is the body. And that oil is the good deeds that a person does, meaning the mitzvahs. Not so much the love and fear of God, which is the feelings that the person has for God, but rather the mitzvahs, which is what God wants, not what the person wants, and that is what makes the Shechina present in the body. Otherwise, it's on top of the body, over the head. So in order to explain how it is that the Shechina is present more in one place than another, since God is everywhere and there's no place empty of Him, so the Alter Rebbe begins to give an example. Just as the neshama brings life and gives life to the entire body and all the parts of the body equally, while at the same time it also gives each individual limb and each individual organ a different kind of life, and certainly a different and unique kind of koyach, of faculty. So the Alter Rebbe explains that if we're talking about the essence of the neshama itself, the true essence of the neshama, here it isn't correct to say that the neshama is more in the head than any other part of the body. And the neshama is, we say, life is centered in the head, and from there it spreads to the rest of the body. So we couldn't be talking about the real essence of the neshama. Rather, we're talking about a life that exists in the neshama that is described as being contained in the neshama, but it isn't the neshama itself. And although this is called the essential life, chai be'etzem, but what we're describing with chai be'etzem is that the life of the body, which comes from the neshama, is in its origin centered in the neshama. But that's not the essence of the neshama. It's the essence of the life that comes to the body from the neshama. And that's why it's called chai be'etzem. It is the essence of the life that comes to the body. But the essence of the neshama, the atzmus of the neshama, can't be described as the etzem of the life of the body, because it isn't the sum total or the essence or the core of the life that comes to the body. It's of an entirely different nature, of a entirely different level. It is completely spiritual, while the life of the body is finite and physical. And in this part of the neshama that is described as life that is contained in the neshama, which is a source for the life that eventually comes into the body, from that place in the neshama, two kinds of life are expressed. One is a general life, chayes kloli, and one is a particular individual life. The chayes kloli is what gives life to all parts of the body equally, and this is centered in the head. And from the head, it later divides up into more specific types of life, the different levels or degrees of life that exist in the individual parts of the body, and also the different functions and the different faculties that exist in the different parts of the body. And now, the Alter Rebbe on page 142 concludes the analogy. It's the middle of the page, the line begins V'hinei. V'hinei al hamshochas kol hatayag minei keiches v'chayis mehelem haneshama el haguf. In this bringing down of the 613 different kinds of life and powers, which correspond to the 613 parts of the body, to reveal them from their hidden state in the neshama, which is not the essence of the neshama, but contained in the neshama. And it comes down into the body, l'hachayese, to give life to the body, because it can be considered a source for the life of the body, Aleha Amru, it is concerning that part of the neshama and not the essence of the neshama that we say, She'ikir Mishkana v'Hasher Osa, Shel Hamshocha Zu v'Gili Zeh, Hukule b'Meichen Shebereish. It is this revelation, he emphasizes revelation, to distinguish it from essence of the neshama. It is this part of the neshama that is predisposed to revelation, to influencing the body and giving life to the body. It is that part of the life of the neshama that we say is centered in the head, in the brain. Because it is centered in the head, heim mekablim tefillah, the brain and the head receive life first. They receive the faculty and the life that is appropriate for them because of the way they're put together and the way that they're constructed. And what is it that applies? What kind of kayach is appropriate to the brain? It is chachma, bina, and das that are expressed in the brain, and also thought that takes place in the brain, and everything that is related to intelligence. And not only does the brain receive its life first, elogam klolus kol hamshochis hachayis l'shar ha'evodim gam ken klula u'melubeshes b'meichen shebereish. All the life that will come to all the parts of the body are also contained and clothed in the brain. It starts off in the brain. Sham hu iker v'shar shel hamshocha zu v'bechinas gilui eva hachayus shel kol neshama kula. It is there that the main and original expression and revelation of this light and life of the neshama is in the brain. And from there extends and spreads a ray of life to all the other parts of all the other limbs. And then each part of the body receives a kayach, a faculty, and a type of life that is appropriate to it, to that limb, according to its composition and according to its nature. Vision takes place in the eye, hearing takes place in the ear, and so on. So we know that the brain is connected to all the particulars and all the specific activities of the body, because as the Alter Rebbe said before, the brain is aware and senses all that takes place and all that happens with the various limbs and organs of the body. Now, if the brain was completely removed from the body, in other words, the life of the brain was of a different nature than the life of the body, then the brain would not feel what's going on in the body, because it would be removed from it. It would be indifferent to it. Since the brain does feel it, the explanation must be that the particular life in the particular limb has its origin in the brain and never quite gets detached and disconnected from its origin. And therefore, even when it expresses itself in the particular limb and has become recognizable as a particular faculty, it still maintains a connection to the brain. And that's why the brain still feels it. And all the powers come and spread from the mind, as is known, because it is there where the entire life of the neshama expresses itself in a revealed state. Because there all the life that will spread from it is revealed in the brain. And it's the individual powers of this general life that are that spread from there and reach all the parts of the body. So in the brain there is still a general state of life, and it doesn't become specific until it reaches the body. And even when it reaches the body, and it's the body and the particular limbs of the body that give the faculty its uniqueness and its expression, yet it still remains connected to the original general life as it was in the brain. As, for example, the light of the sun that shines through many windows into many rooms, and yet the light of the sun itself is not divided originally into different rooms. It is a general light. It is not the essence of the sun, and it gets further divided by the rooms that receive it, by the windows through which it enters. Afilu halev, and even the heart, which is considered the source of life for the body, is mekabel mehamayach. Even the heart gets its life from the brain. V'lochen hamayach shalit olav b'tildose kenal, and it is for this reason, because the heart receives its life from the brain, that the brain controls the heart by nature and by natural condition. We are born that way, that the mind controls the heart. Why does the heart obey the mind? Why is the heart subservient to the mind? Because the heart receives its life from the brain. And all of this is an analogy and an example for how it is that God can fill the entire world, and no space is devoid of Him, and at the same time He is more present and more revealed in one place than in another, just as the neshama also has these two kinds of life. It gives life to the entire body and all the parts of the body equally, and yet at the same time it is centered in the brain and expresses itself more in certain limbs than in other. In today's Hayom Yom, the 24th of Iyar, the 39th day of the Eimer, the Rebbe writes that there's a pasuk that says, "Im b'chukeisei telechu," if you will go in my commandments and my laws, and the sages interpret it that "if" is really the same as halavai. It's a plea. God is pleading, if you would only go in my statutes and follow my commandments. And God's pleading with Jews to keep the Torah is in itself an aid that helps us and gives us the ability to remain strong in our choice to do good, in our decision to do good. And what's more is that you go in my statutes, which implies that the soul then becomes a mahalech. It makes radical progress. True movement means radical movement, radical progress. With the coming of Mashiach, there will be revealed the virtue and the preciousness of the traits of simplicity and wholeheartedness, which is found in the Aveda of the simple Jew who davens and recites Tehillim with simple, heartfelt sincerity.